All right, welcome. We're going to do a little time traveling today. We're heading to the year 2026, and we're just going to look at one single week in March. But this was a week that, quietly changed everything. We're basically creating a future history, piecing together the key moments and, well, the numbers that really defined this turning point. And believe me, some of these numbers are absolutely staggering.
Okay, first up, this jaw-dropper, $25 billion. That was OpenAI's annualized revenue at the time. To put that into perspective, we're talking about growth faster than almost any enterprise software company in history. This was a company that, just a few years before, was a nonprofit research lab. So yeah, this number wasn't just a milestone, it was a loud and clear statement of dominance.
But hey, that $25 billion wasn't just going into shareholders' pockets. It was actually fueling a whole new economy. A LinkedIn report that came out that exact same week showed that the AI boom had created 1.3 million brand new jobs around the world in just 3 years. That's not a wave, folks. That's a tsunami of economic creation.
And if you're wondering where all this was happening, the answer is pretty much everywhere. AI-driven retail sales shot up by a mind-blowing 693% year over year. So this wasn't some niche tech for the early adopters anymore. No way. It was getting woven right into the fabric of our daily lives, shaping how we shopped, what we bought, and how every business out there operated.
Okay, so you've got this explosive growth, right? But that's just the backdrop. Let's get into what was really going on behind the scenes. Because the real story of that week wasn't just about the numbers. It was happening in the backrooms, in this high-stakes power struggle that would end up defining the future of the entire industry.
And the flashpoint, the big moment that really kicked things off, was this decision from the Pentagon. Anthropic, a company that was kind of seen as the industry's safety-first darling, had its talks with the Department of Defense completely fall apart, specifically over autonomous weapons. The fallout was just immediate and brutal. The DoD labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk and ordered a full purge of its tech. And who was waiting in the wings? You guessed it, OpenAI, which swooped right in to scoop up all those lucrative defense contracts.
And just like that, this one decision basically fractured the entire AI landscape. On one side, you had OpenAI just doubling down. They embraced the defense work, kept their models locked up and proprietary, and started chasing a frankly mind-blowing $100 billion funding round. And on the other side, Anthropic went into full-on rebellion mode. They actually sued the DoD, pivoted their whole business to enterprise coding, and became this really unlikely hero for the open source community. It was a clash of titans for sure, but it was also a clash of ideologies.
But look, this was not just a two-horse race. The whole tech world was shifting underfoot. You had Google's Gemini 3, which was crushing the benchmarks for multimodal stuff. Understanding text, images, and audio all at once. Then there's Meta, whose Llama architecture was the darling of the open source world, even if it was hitting some growing pains. Amazon was pouring money into its own secret model, Project Olympus. And Microsoft? Well, Microsoft was stuck right in the middle, trying to play this delicate game of backing both the proprietary giant, OpenAI, and the new rebel, Anthropic.
So how did this whole corporate battle royale actually affect regular people? Because by 2026, this technology had officially escaped the lab. It was now fully integrated into our phones, our jobs, everything. The whole idea of a digital assistant was changing before our eyes. Meta launched this personal superintelligence thing that wasn't just a voice you summoned, it was this persistent companion living inside your Instagram and WhatsApp. Apple finally gave Siri a much-needed brain boost, giving it awareness of what you were doing across different apps. And, crucially, doing it all privately right on your device. And Google Search? It was becoming a zero-click experience, giving you super tailored answers before you could even finish typing your question.
And this is where things get complicated. This is the real paradox of the AI economy. Remember that 1.3 million new jobs? Well, that same week, a big survey of Fortune 500 companies dropped a pretty sobering fact. AI agents had already replaced 40% of their basic IT support roles. So this wasn't a simple story of jobs created or jobs lost. It was both, happening at the same time and at an incredible speed.
So the crucial takeaway is this. The job market wasn't just getting bigger or smaller, it was being completely rewritten. Brand new, high-demand jobs like AI integration engineer were popping up everywhere. And at the exact same time, a major study showed that AI tools were now better and faster at drafting complex legal patents than junior lawyers. The value of different skills was being rearranged in real time.
But here's the thing we often forget. All of this incredible software, it all rests on a huge physical foundation. And back in 2026, the world was just starting to wake up to the immense and often hidden cost of powering this new industrial revolution.
I mean, the scale here is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. We mentioned OpenAI was looking for $100 billion. That money was for hardware and electricity, plain and simple. NVIDIA was pushing out new chips designed specifically to cut down on insane energy use. Amazon was building these massive, specialized data centers that had to be liquid-cooled. And reports were starting to surface that the sheer demand for electricity from these places was starting to put a real strain on national power grids.
But it wasn't just about power and computer chips. The industry was staring down a much more existential problem, something most people weren't even talking about yet: AI data exhaustion. To put it simply, the AI models were getting so good and so hungry for data that they were about to consume the entire high-quality, human-made internet.
And listen, this wasn't some far-off theoretical problem. A group of top data scientists published this really stark warning in MIT Technology Review that very week. They said, and I quote, "We will hit the data wall by late 2026. They predicted that within the year, the well of quality human-generated data would just run dry, and that would force the entire industry to start training new AIs on data created by old AIs. A massive, untested, and potentially disastrous feedback loop.
So, with the technology's power becoming totally undeniable, society was basically in a mad dash to catch up. The race was on to build some guardrails, to establish some rules, and to figure out how the heck to control this incredible force we just unleashed.
And the response was, well, a patchwork. Here in the US, you had regulators trying to write new antitrust rules aimed at big tech's control over AI, while the Copyright Office made a huge ruling, no copyright for books written entirely by AI. In the EU, they were focused on the environmental cost, talking about a green tax on these power-hungry data centers. And pretty much every publisher in the world was starting to demand to know if their content was being used for training.
But, maybe the most powerful call for action came from inside the AI community itself. A bunch of independent researchers published this open letter demanding what they called open weights. They wanted companies like OpenAI to be forced to reveal the inner workings of their models. And their argument was pretty simple. You can't tell us a system is safe if we're not even allowed to look under the hood.
And all of this led to the ultimate, almost sci-fi safety debate. An international group of safety institutes proposed a mandate: every advanced data center must have a physical, hardware-level kill switch. The idea was to make sure that no matter how smart AI gets, humanity always has the power to just pull the plug.
So there you have it, one single week in March of 2026. It was a moment of just unbelievable speed and acceleration, but it was also a moment of incredible tension. And it really set the stage for all the conflicts that would go on to define the rest of the decade.
Looking back now, that 1 week really crystallized 3 core tensions. First, you had this insane growth clashing with the astronomical cost, asking the big question, can this revolution ever actually be sustainable? Second, you had the race for more and more powerful AI running straight into a wall, the very real crisis of data exhaustion. And finally, you had that deep, almost philosophical divide between the open, collaborative world of open source and the closed-off proprietary systems fighting for total market control.
Which really leaves us with this final thought. Looking back from our vantage point, that week in 2026 feels like such a critical inflection point. And it forces us to ask, at what point do we stop just reacting to this technology? When do we shift from being spectators to actually being the architects? It makes you wonder, are we actively building the future we want, or are we just sitting back and watching it render in front of our eyes?